A top focus on US and Iran in retaliation for recent rocket attacks on US troop locations in Iraq. US military launched an airstrike on facilities used by Iran-backed militia in eastern Syria today. The Syrian Observatory for Human Rights reported that 17 pro-Iran fighters have been killed in the first military action undertaken by the Biden administration. Now, Pentagon spokesman John Kirby has said in a statement, and I quote, "At President Biden's direction, U.S. military forces conducted airstrikes against infrastructure utilized by Iranian-backed militant groups in eastern Syria. These strikes were authorized in response to recent attacks against American and coalition personnel in Iraq and to ongoing threats to those personnel." Kirby also added that the move was designed to de-escalate the situation in eastern Syria and Iraq. U.S. Secretary of Defense Lloyd Austin has said that intelligence developed by Iraqis helped in refining the target. Listen it.
We're confident in the target that we went after. We know what we hit. And we're confident that that target was being used by the same Shia militia that conducted the strikes. And so you'll get more information in terms of the effects of the strike as time goes by. But I just wanted to make sure that, I gave you that viewpoint from me, that level of confidence that there is connectivity. And so we're very deliberate about our approach, as you would expect us to be. We allowed and encouraged the Iraqis to investigate and develop intelligence, and that was very helpful to us in refining the target.
The director of Syrian Observatory for Human Rights reported the strikes destroyed 3 lorries carrying munitions. There were many casualties. Preliminary indications are that at least 17 fighters were killed, all members of popular mobilization forces. The target was a border control point used by Iranian-backed armed Iraqi groups, including Kataib Hezbollah and Kataib Sayyid al-Shuhada. The U.S. has blamed Kataib Hezbollah for numerous attacks targeting U.S. personnel and interests in Iraq in the past. The strike was in retaliation of 3 rocket attacks on facilities in Iraq, which are used by U.S. and coalition forces fighting the Islamic State group. A rocket attack had targeted high security zone in Iraqi capital that is home to the U.S. Embassy. One of those strikes on February 15th had killed a civilian and a foreign contractor working with coalition forces. Several U.S. contractors and a soldier were injured. Kirby said that Iraq is in charge of investigating the 15th February attack. Let's quickly get in a sense of perspective in terms of the developments that are taking place in Middle East at the moment. I'm joined in by Fuad Izzadi, who's a professor at the University of Tehran, and he's joining me live on this newscast. Thank you so much, Professor, for joining our newscast today. Now, let me begin by asking, the fact that the strikes mark the U.S. military's first known action under President Joe Biden, considering Syrian facilities used by Iran-backed militia were bombed, even though in retaliation. In your opinion, what's the message being sent to Iran and what reaction is now expected from Iran?
I think the Biden administration is sending a message to the world that they are going to violate international law the same way the Trump administration used to do it. Syria is an independent country. Attacking Syrian territory needs permission from UN Security Council, and the US doesn't have that permission. There are several friends that the U.S. has on UN Security Council, France, UK. If U.S. had proper justifications, maybe U.S. could get all permanent members agree on attacking Syrian territory. It seems that the Biden administration doesn't have any respect for international law. So the first point is that they are doing things that are against international law. The second point is that I think attacking Syrian territory for an incident that happened in Iraq is a show of cowardness, because if the U.S. was capable of attacking the same people who apparently attacked U.S. facilities in Iraq they should have attacked the same people, or at least attacked the same group in Iraq. When you attack people in Syria for an incident that happened in Iraq, shows that you have some problems, limitations in Iraq. And as you know, the Iraqi parliament has asked the US to leave Iraq. So the message of the Iraqi people to the representatives in the Iraqi parliament is for the US to leave. And they're occupying the Iraqi territory in a manner that is not fine with the Iraqi people. And they need to reconsider this type of activities and killing innocent people.
Fair enough. Professor, even though the strikes are retaliatory, do you see the strikes now complicating diplomatic efforts with Tehran, especially the nuclear deal?
You know, the US has not attacked Iran. And the reason is that if they attack Iran, the response from Iran would be quite severe. And the nuclear deal is going to be in serious jeopardy if the Biden administration decides to follow the same failed policies.
But see, the Syrian facilities were used by Iran-backed militia. So what do you make of the Iranian presence over there?
Iran is not at this time very much present in Syria. The Syrian conflict is very much over.
Professor, it's a fact that they were being used by Iran-backed militia, those facilities.
You know, this is making things very complicated because, as I said, Syria is an independent country. Syria, some years ago, asked Iran to help with the civil war that the Americans started in Syria. That civil war is almost over. And attacking some people in Syria for an attack that apparently happened in Iraq, it doesn't have any justification. And with regard to the nuclear deal, if Iranian government sees that the Biden administration is as illegal as the Trump administration when it comes to international law, then having an agreement with the war criminals in Washington is not going to make any sense because they're just following the same failed policies of the Trump administration.
Not too far away from the Trump administration. Having said that, last but not least, Professor, Pentagon spokesperson John Kirby has said that the strikes were conducted in conjunction with US allies in the region. What does this tell of President Joe Biden's military strategy when it comes to the Middle East?
The US policy in the Middle East is a failed policy, and US allies in the Middle East are also failing states. Countries like Saudi Arabia do not know how to do foreign policy. They failed in Syria, they failed in Iraq, they failed in Lebanon, they failed in their fight with Qatar, and more importantly, they failed in Yemen. So the United States is not doing well internally. They have lots of difficulties inside the United States, and they don't know how to do foreign policy because they're close to countries that are failing states. And that's very sad for the United States. The fact that you have a new administration in Washington was a sign that maybe they're going to change these failed policies, but apparently not.
Absolutely. It does seem to be quite a challenging time for diplomacy between the United States and Iran as of now. For now, thank you so much, Professor Fawzi, for joining us on this newscast.